Welcome, friend. As the day softly settles around you, let us embark on a quiet journey together, one that asks not for effort or striving, but simply for your gentle presence. Tonight, we will explore an idea that is both ancient and wonderfully simple. The meaning of life is just to be alive. Not to achieve, not to become, not to prove anything to anyone, including yourself. Just to be. Allow this soothing thought to begin its gentle work, guiding you away from the day's demands and towards a calm inner stillness. Let your breath deepen, your body relax, and your mind begin to unwind as we drift into a story of remembering what you've always known. Many of us, without realizing it, have been told a quiet untruth. We've learned to see ourselves as projects, as puzzles to be solved, always striving to become a better version of ourselves, somewhere in the distant future. We believe that after enough effort, enough learning, enough searching, we will finally arrive at who we are meant to be. But what if this whole premise is gently mistaken? What if the very search for yourself is what keeps you from finding the peaceful contentment you seek? Imagine a wave emerging from the vast, boundless ocean. Does the wave struggle to become a better wave? Does an apple on a tree apologize for its shape or color? No, they simply are. You too are like that wave, that apple. You didn't come into this world as a separate entity. You came out of it as an expression of the very cosmos itself, looking at itself, wondering about itself through your unique eyes. You are not a stranger here, not an accident in need of correction. You are this universe, breathing and experiencing, a perfect, dancing flame. But somewhere along the way, we've forgotten this deep truth. We've learned to see ourselves as tiny, separate beings, constantly needing to be fixed, improved, or completed. And from this feeling of separation, a subtle tension often arises. So, our journey together tonight is not about adding anything to yourself. You already possess everything you need. Instead, it is a gentle process of subtraction, of unlearning, of allowing the soft mud in the pond to settle, so the clear water of your true nature can quietly shine through. There is nowhere to get to, nothing to achieve. Every moment of this exploration is already the destination itself. The journey is the treasure. Settle deeper now. Let your breath flow freely and allow these words to become a lullaby for your heart. Let me ask you something and invite you to simply sit with this thought without needing to find an answer right away. When was the last time you felt completely, utterly, unconditionally at peace with yourself, exactly as you are right now? Not after achieving a goal or solving a problem or finding a relationship, but simply in this very moment, with this breath, with this strange and wonderful sense of I am. It's likely hard to recall, because we live in a world that often, though unintentionally, suggests there is something fundamentally missing, something wrong with us, that we are somehow incomplete. Think of how many messages tell us to improve, to optimize, to become more. But what if I suggest with the utmost gentleness that there is absolutely nothing wrong with you, nothing at all? Not in the sense of being perfectly tidy or well-behaved, but perfect in the way a flame dances, or a tree grows crookedly towards the sun, or a galaxy spirals in the quiet expanse of space. You see, you've been taught to judge yourself by standards that simply don't exist in the natural world. Have you ever seen a flower straining to bloom, or a wave apologizing for the way it crashes? They simply are. They simply do what they do, because that is their very nature. They are expressions of the same flowing force that beats your heart, that breathes your lungs, that dreams your dreams. But we humans, we often get this gentle, curious idea that we are the exception, that we alone are mistakes in need of correction, that we must somehow earn our place here, justify our existence, prove our worth. And so we embark on a never-ending chase, pursuing a future self who always seems to be just around the next corner. But what if that ideal future self is simply a mirage, a beautiful dream that keeps us endlessly moving? Understanding why you are the way you are, while helpful, doesn't always change the fact that you are precisely the way you are. And the way you are, your unique blend of quirks and shadows, your particular rhythm of expansion and contraction, your specific pattern of light and darkness, this is not a problem to be solved. This is a quiet, unique song to be sung. Your so-called imperfections are not flaws in a system. They are features, the very texture that makes you wonderfully recognizable in the grand symphony of existence. Without them, you wouldn't be you. You'd be some generic, perfectly smooth and perhaps a little uninteresting version of a human being. We've been so conditioned to view ourselves through the lens of improvement that we've forgotten how to simply appreciate what already is. We look at our anxiety and see pathology, instead of perhaps a deep sensitivity. We look at our sadness and see depression, instead of the rich depth of feeling that makes us human. We look at our confusion and see weakness, instead of the humble recognition of life's profound mystery. What would happen if, just for a moment, you gently released the need to fix yourself? What if you looked at your life not as a problem but as a piece of music, not asking if it's right or wrong, but simply listening to its unique unfolding melody? Your anger, your fear, your joy, your confusion, these are not errors in your design. They are the colors with which life is painting itself through you. You are not something that needs to be corrected. You are something that needs to be recognized, appreciated, and celebrated. When you were born, the universe wasn't conducting an experiment to create something better than what came before. It was expressing itself as you, in all your particular glory. And what a strange, delightful, unrepeatable expression you are. No one else has your exact way of seeing the soft sunlight filter through the leaves. No one else has your precise way of laughing at the gentle absurdities of life. No one else carries your specific combination of tenderness and strength, wisdom and foolishness, clarity and confusion. This is not random. It is the universe playing a song that has never been played before and will never be played again. You are a once-in-eternity event, a cosmic improvisation that will never be repeated. Why then would you spend your precious, irreplaceable existence trying to become someone else? Why pursue an imaginary ideal when the miracle is already happening right here, right now? The gentle paradox is that all this striving, all this endless becoming, it's like the ocean trying to become wet, or a fire trying to learn how to burn. You already are what you're trying to become. You just haven't noticed it yet. And the reason you haven't noticed is perhaps because you've been looking in the wrong direction towards some imagined future, instead of right here, right now, at the quiet miracle that is already unfolding. What if the person you're trying to become is simply an idea, a gentle story, a fantasy that subtly keeps you from appreciating the deep reality of who you already are? This doesn't mean you stop growing, or learning, or changing. Trees keep growing, but they don't strain to become something other than trees. Waves keep flowing, but they don't stress about becoming better waves. They simply express their nature, moment by quiet moment, without apology or effort. And when you stop trying so hard to become someone else, when you relax into the simple fact of your existence, something truly extraordinary happens. You begin to discover that you're not actually a static person at all. You're more like a verb, a continuous happening, a flowing unfolding of the same creative principle that moves the stars and grows the soft grass. You are not broken. You never were. You are nature itself, expressing its infinite creativity through the magnificent accident of your particular nervous system. And that, my friend, is more than enough. It is everything. There comes a quiet moment in every journey of self-discovery when you realize you are, in a sense, walking alone. not because you've been abandoned or because you are apart, but because you've begun to see through the gentle theater that many people mistake for life. This can be a subtly disorienting discovery. You might look around at friends, family, colleagues, and begin to notice something different. Many conversations might feel like quiet performances. Many concerns might seem like elaborate distractions. It's not that you love these people any less. If anything, you might love them more clearly, without the subtle needs and projections that once clouded your vision. But you can no longer participate in the quiet agreement to treat the surface of life as if it were the depths. This is what some call the loneliness of awakening, and it is one of the most natural things in the world, though rarely spoken of openly. Most human relationships, beautifully intricate as they are often based on shared unconsciousness. We gather to reinforce each other's gentle stories, to validate each other's quiet dramas, to confirm that yes, the world is exactly as we softly perceive it. We bond over shared concerns, common fears, our collective agreements about what truly matters and what doesn't. But when you begin to gently awaken, when you start to see that many of what we call problems are simply thoughts we are taking too seriously, when you realize that much of what we call identity is just a soft costume we've forgotten we're wearing, you can no longer participate in these unconscious agreements with the same familiar enthusiasm. It's like being the only quietly sober person at a gentle party where everyone else is softly tipsy. You can still enjoy their company, still appreciate their humanity, but you cannot pretend to be intoxicated along with them. This can feel profoundly isolating because we are tribal creatures. We long to belong, to feel connected, to be part of the gentle pack. But authentic awakening often requires a quiet period of conscious separation from the pack, a deliberate stepping away from the collective trance. This doesn't mean becoming a hermit or developing a quiet contempt for ordinary human life. Quite the opposite. It means learning to be alone without being lonely, to be separate without feeling superior, to be different without feeling defensive. True solitude is not isolation. It is spaciousness. It is the ability to be with yourself so completely that you don't need others to fill a gentle silence, to validate your existence, to confirm that you are real. When you can be genuinely comfortable in your own quiet company, then your relationships with others become wonderfully clean. You are no longer using them as soft mirrors to see yourself, or as gentle crutches to support your identity, or as subtle drugs to numb your existential inquiries. Imagine walking through a quiet park, watching people lost in their own private worlds, perhaps with earbuds in, and you might gently consider, here are human beings who cannot bear even a few quiet minutes alone with their own consciousness. They need constant gentle stimulation, constant quiet distraction, constant input from outside themselves. But what if consciousness itself is the most interesting thing there is? What if the simple fact of awareness, the bare phenomenon of being able to experience anything at all, is more fascinating than any entertainment, more fulfilling than any achievement, more profound than any relationship? This is what you discover in genuine solitude, not the loneliness of someone who can't connect, but the gentle fullness of someone who doesn't need to. And paradoxically, when you can be truly alone, you begin to feel more connected to everything than ever before. Because when you're not reaching for others to complete you, you begin to sense the invisible thread that already connects you to everything. When you're not desperately trying to belong, you realize you've never not belonged. You are not separate from this universe. You are an expression of it, just as much as the mountains and the oceans and the stars. This realization, however, often comes with a quiet price. Your old friendships might feel subtly hollow. Your family dynamics might become gently strained. People who once felt so close might now seem to be speaking a slightly different language. And this can bring up a tremendous gentle grief. the grief of outgrowing the very relationships that once defined you. This grief is sacred. Don't rush through it. Don't try to fix it, or quietly explain it away. It's the natural consequence of expansion, like a snake softly shedding its skin, or a tree quietly outgrowing its pot. Something in you has grown too large for its old container, and there's always a gentle sadness in leaving the familiar behind. But on the other side of this grief is freedom, the freedom to love without neediness, to connect without losing yourself, to be intimate without pretending to be someone you are not. And sometimes in the spaciousness of this new kind of solitude, you discover something unexpected. You find that you're not actually alone at all. You're in the quiet company of everything that has ever awakened to itself, every sage and mystic and poet who has ever looked deeply enough to see through the illusion of separation. You're walking alone, yes, but you're walking a path that countless others have quietly walked before you. And although you can't see them, although you might not meet them in your daily life, you're part of an invisible congregation of those who have remembered what it means to be truly alive. So don't be afraid of the quiet loneliness that comes with seeing clearly. It's not a punishment, it's a gentle graduation. It's the natural consequence of refusing to live life at the level of distraction and unconsciousness that most people accept as normal. Walking alone doesn't mean walking without love. If anything, it means walking toward a love that is so much vaster, so much more genuine than anything you could have imagined when you were still trying to find yourself through others. Now, having spoken of walking alone, let me tell you about love, real love. Not the sanitized soft Hallmark card version we've been quietly sold, not the possessive clinging we often mistake for caring, but the kind of love that gently transforms everything it touches, including the one who loves. Most of what we call love is actually need in gentle disguise. We love someone because they make us feel good about ourselves, because they complete us, because they provide security, or validation, or a sense of gentle meaning. This isn't love in its truest form. It's more like emotional commerce, a quiet transaction, where we trade pieces of ourselves for pieces of someone else, softly hoping to build something whole from our mutual incompleteness. But real love, the kind that mystics and poets have always pointed toward, is something entirely different. It's not based on need, but on overflow. It's not a reaching for something outside yourself, but a gentle recognition of something that was never actually separate from you in the first place. To love authentically requires the most dangerous thing imaginable, complete vulnerability. Not just the vulnerability of sharing your feelings or your quiet fears. That's easy compared to this. I'm talking about the vulnerability of loving someone so completely that you're willing to let them change you, to let them gently dissolve your carefully constructed sense of who you think you are. True love is not safe. It's not a quiet haven from the storm of existence. It is the storm. It's the willingness to be swept away, to be transformed beyond recognition, to risk everything you think you know about yourself, for the possibility of discovering what you really are. This is why most people, if we're honest with ourselves, don't really want love. They want comfort. They want security. They want someone to make them feel better about themselves, without requiring them to actually change. They want love like a soft security blanket, not love like a hurricane. But love, when it's real, when it's truly alive, is always a gentle hurricane. It strips away everything that isn't essential, everything that's just pretense, and protection, and persona. It reveals you to yourself in ways you never expected, shows you aspects of your being you didn't know existed. I've quietly watched people resist this kind of love with every fiber of their being, even as they softly claim to want it more than anything. They want to love and be loved, but they want to remain unchanged. They want intimacy without risk, connection without vulnerability, union without transformation. But that's like wanting to swim without getting wet, or to dance without moving your body. Love is movement. Love is change. Love is the willingness to softly die to who you think you are, for the possibility of discovering who you really are. And here's the beautiful paradox. The more willing you are to be changed by love, the more you discover that what you really are cannot be changed at all. Beneath all the roles and identities and stories that love gently strips away, there's something in you that remains untouched, unshakable, eternal. But you only discover this by being willing to lose everything else. You only find what cannot be destroyed by allowing everything that can be destroyed to be dissolved. This is why love is so closely related to gentle death in all the great spiritual traditions. Not physical death, but the death of the small self, the death of the ego, that thinks it knows who it is, and what it wants, and how things should softly be. When you love someone truly, you die to your version of them. You stop trying to make them fit your image of who they should be, and allow them to be who they actually are. And in that allowing, in that gentle space of non-resistance, you discover that love is not something you do, but something you are. Love is your natural state when all the barriers and defenses and strategies softly fall away. It's not an emotion that comes and goes. It's the quiet ground of being itself, the delicate fabric from which everything else is woven. But to live from this love requires tremendous quiet courage, because it means giving up the illusion of control. It means loving people without trying to change them, caring for them without trying to fix them, cherishing them without trying to possess them. It means loving the way the sun shines, not because it wants something in return, not because it's trying to prove anything, but because shining is its very nature. When you discover that loving is your nature, not your strategy, everything gently changes. Most people love conditionally. I'll love you if you make me happy, if you meet my needs, if you don't threaten my security. But conditional love is not love at all. It's negotiation. It's a contract, disguised as devotion. Real love is utterly unconditional. It loves the whole person, their light and their shadow, their beauty and their messiness, their wisdom and their gentle foolishness. It doesn't love despite imperfections. It loves the imperfections as part of the perfect wholeness of what is. And when you love this way, something extraordinary happens. The other person feels it immediately. They feel seen, accepted, appreciated for exactly who they are. And in that space of unconditional acceptance, they naturally begin to flower, to express the best of themselves, not because they're trying to earn your love, but because they're relaxing into their own true nature. This is the secret of real relationship. You don't love someone to get something from them. You love them to give them the gift of being loved exactly as they are. And in giving this gift freely, without attachment to outcome, you discover that love itself is the reward. But this kind of love requires a gentle faith, faith that you don't need anyone else to complete you, faith that love given freely always quietly returns, though not necessarily in the form you expect. Faith that the universe is fundamentally friendly, fundamentally safe, fundamentally on your side. And that brings us to one of the deepest teachings of all, that love and faith are not two different things, but two gentle faces of the same profound surrender to what simply is. Now, faith. There's a word that has been so twisted, so misunderstood, so loaded with gentle baggage, that many people can't hear it without immediately putting up their defenses. But I'm not talking about belief. I'm not talking about accepting doctrines or swallowing concepts that don't make sense to your quiet intelligence. I'm talking about something much more fundamental, much more immediate, the willingness to trust the gentle process of existence itself. Think about it this way. Every morning when you wake up, you demonstrate perfect faith. You don't lie in bed wondering whether your heart will keep softly beating, whether your lungs will keep gently breathing, whether the earth will keep quietly spinning. You simply trust that the vast intelligence that has been operating your body for all these years will continue to do so. You have faith that when you go to sleep at night, you'll wake up in the morning. You have faith that when you plant a seed, it will grow. You have faith that when you walk, the ground will support you. This trust is so fundamental, so automatic, that you don't even think of it as faith, but that's exactly what it is. The gentle question is, if you can trust the universe to operate your heartbeat, to orchestrate the soft dance of atoms in your cells, to coordinate the symphony of neural activity that creates your thoughts, why can't you trust it with your life? Most of us live as if we're the quiet CEO of our existence, as if the whole show would softly fall apart if we weren't constantly managing, controlling, worrying, planning. We carry the gentle weight of the world on our shoulders, as if we were personally responsible for keeping the sun rising and the seasons changing. But what if you're not the CEO? What if you're more like a surfer? And life is the wave. A surfer doesn't control the wave. She responds to it, moves with it, finds her gentle balance within its power. She trusts the wave to carry her, even though she can't see exactly where it's going. This is faith, as I understand it. Not the belief that everything will work out according to your plans, but the deep trust that whatever happens, you can respond to it. Not the confidence that you'll never face difficulty, but the quiet knowing that you are bigger than any difficulty you might face. Faith is falling backward into the gentle arms of the universe, and discovering that you were never actually in danger of falling. It's the recognition that the same intelligence that grows your fingernails and digests your food and heals your cuts is also orchestrating your entire life, especially when it doesn't look like what you think it should look like. But we resist this gentle surrender because we've been taught that faith is weakness, that trust is naivete, that the universe is fundamentally hostile or indifferent to our well-being. We've been conditioned to believe that if we don't maintain constant vigilance, constant control, everything will softly fall apart. And so we live in a state of chronic tension, like a person trying to hold up the sky with their bare hands. We exhaust ourselves attempting to manage outcomes that were never ours to manage in the first place. I remember watching my daughter learn to ride a bicycle. At first, she gripped the handlebars so tightly, tried so hard to control every wobble, that she kept falling over. The more she tried to force balance, the more unstable she became. But then, in a moment of gentle frustration, she simply let go, not of the handlebars, but of the effort to control every tiny movement. She relaxed into the motion, trusted the bike to find its balance, and suddenly she was flying. This is the nature of faith, not passive resignation, but active trust. But to live this way requires letting go of one of the ego's favorite fantasies, the idea that you know what's best for you. The ego loves to have preferences, opinions, 5-year plans. It loves to say, this is what I want, this is what I need, this is how things should be. And there's nothing wrong with preferences and plans, but when you hold them lightly, when you offer them up as suggestions rather than demands, you create space for life to gently surprise you, to offer you things you never would have thought to ask for. Some of the most beautiful experiences of my life came from plans falling apart, from getting exactly the opposite of what I thought I wanted. The failed relationships that led to deeper self-understanding, the lost jobs that opened up new possibilities, the illnesses that taught me about quiet presence, the disappointments that cracked my heart open to a bigger love. None of these experiences felt like gifts at the time. They felt like failures, like evidence that I wasn't managing my life properly. But in retrospect, I can see that they were exactly what was needed to gently wake me up to who I really am. This is the ultimate act of faith, trusting that your life, exactly as it's unfolding, is the perfect curriculum for your awakening. Not perfect in the sense of comfortable or convenient, but perfect in the sense of precisely what your consciousness needs to evolve beyond its current gentle limitations. Every challenge is an invitation to discover resources you didn't know you had. Every loss is an opportunity to realize what can never truly be lost. Every failure is a chance to see that you are not your successors, that your worth is not dependent on your performance. When you begin to see your life this way as a perfectly designed course in awakening, rather than a random series of events you must control, everything becomes sacred. Every experience becomes a teacher. Every moment becomes an opportunity to surrender more deeply into the quiet mystery of what you are. And in that surrender, in that radical trust, you discover that you were never actually separate from the intelligence that's been running the show all along. You are not a victim of life. You are life expressing itself through the unique lens of your consciousness. Faith, then, is not belief in something outside yourself. It's recognition of what you already are. The universe experiencing itself through the beautiful accident of your awareness. Here's one of the great cosmic jokes. The harder you squeeze, the more life softly slips through your fingers. The more you try to control, the more chaotic things seem to become. The more you insist that reality conform to your plans, the more reality seems to gently laugh at your plans. And yet, letting go might be the most misunderstood concept in all of spirituality. When people hear let go, they often think it means becoming passive, giving up, resigning yourself to whatever happens. But that's not letting go. That's just another gentle form of resistance, the resistance of withdrawal. True letting go is incredibly active. It's like learning to surf or learning to sail. You're not passively drifting wherever the current takes you. You're actively engaging with the forces at play, reading them, responding to them, finding your way to dance with them rather than fight them. The Chinese have a beautiful concept called Wu Wei, which is often translated as non-action. But that translation misses the point entirely. Wu Wei is not the absence of action. It's action that flows so naturally from the situation that it doesn't feel forced. It's like water flowing downhill, taking the path of least resistance, while simultaneously being the most powerful force on earth. Watch a master craftsman at work, a potter at the wheel, a calligrapher with a brush, a chef preparing a meal. There's tremendous skill involved, years of practice and refinement. But in the moment of creation, there's no sense of strain or effort. The action emerges organically from the meeting of gentle preparation and joyful spontaneity. This is what life looks like when you stop trying to push the river. You don't become lazy or aimless, you become responsive. You develop what I call intelligent spontaneity, the ability to act appropriately in each quiet moment without having to think through every possible outcome. But to live this way, you have to give up one of the ego's most cherished beliefs, that you are the sole author of your life. You have to recognize that thoughts arise by themselves, that decisions emerge from the interaction of countless subtle factors you're not even aware of, that what you call your choices are really the universe choosing through the particular lens of your nervous system. This doesn't make you powerless. It makes you powerful in a completely different way. Instead of the exhausting power of forcing, you discover the effortless power of allowing. Instead of swimming against the current, you learn to read the current and find the places where it wants to gently carry you. I know this can sound abstract, so let me give you a concrete example. Imagine you're trying to remember someone's name. The harder you try, the more elusive it becomes. Your mind strains and reaches and grasps, but the name stays just out of reach. But then, the moment you stop trying, the moment you relax and let go of the effort, the name appears effortlessly. This is a perfect metaphor for how life works. The things you want most, peace, love, clarity, creative inspiration, can't be forced into existence. They can only be allowed to emerge in the gentle space created by not forcing. But letting go doesn't happen all at once. It's not like flipping a switch from control to surrender. It's more like learning to play a musical instrument, a gradual process of developing new reflexes, new responses, new ways of being in gentle relationship with what is. You might start by noticing your grip. How tightly are you holding your opinions? How desperately are you clinging to your plans? How much energy are you spending trying to make other people behave the way you think they should behave? Just noticing is the first step. Not judging yourself for gripping, not trying to force yourself to let go, but simply becoming aware of the places where you're squeezing life too tightly. Then you might experiment with loosening your grip, just a little. Instead of insisting that things happen exactly as you've imagined, you might softly say, "This is what I prefer, but I'm open to what wants to emerge." Instead of demanding that others see things your way, you might get gently curious about their perspective. It's like learning to hold a butterfly. Grip too tightly, and you'll crush it. Hold your hand completely open, and it will fly away. But cup your hands gently, create a safe space without walls, and the butterfly might choose to stay a while. This is how you hold everything in life: your dreams, your relationships, your identity, firmly enough to engage, lightly enough to let go when the gentle time comes. One of the most profound practices in letting go is learning to be with uncertainty without immediately trying to resolve it. We are so addicted to knowing, to having answers, to feeling like we understand what's happening, that we rush to conclusions, jump to judgments, fill every silence with gentle commentary. But what if you could sit with not knowing the way you sit with a beautiful sunset, not trying to understand it or analyze it or improve it, but simply appreciating the quiet mystery of its existence? What if uncertainty is not a problem to be solved, but a space to be explored? What if the places where you don't know what to do are exactly the places where something new wants to emerge? I've noticed that my best decisions, my most creative insights, my deepest realizations have all come not from thinking harder, but from thinking less. They've emerged from the fertile void of not knowing, from the pregnant silence between thoughts. This is what letting go really means: creating space for the unknown to reveal itself. Not because you're giving up on life, but because you're finally making room for life to live itself through you, without your constant gentle interference. And when you begin to live this way, when you stop trying to be the director of the cosmic play and start allowing yourself to be the character you were born to play, you discover something wonderful. You're not losing control, because you never actually had it in the first place. What you're losing is the exhausting illusion of control. What you're gaining is the exhilarating experience of being fully alive, fully responsive, fully present to the adventure of existence as it unfolds moment by quiet moment. You begin to trust the process, not because you understand it, but because you are it. You are not separate from the intelligence that moves the stars and grows the trees. You are that intelligence expressing itself through the beautiful uniqueness of your particular perspective. And from this recognition comes a profound relaxation, a deep exhale, a letting go so complete that you discover you've been holding your breath your entire life without realizing it. What if I told you that you've been taking life far too seriously? What if this whole magnificent, mysterious, utterly absurd adventure of existence is not a test to be passed, not a problem to be solved, not a mountain to be conquered, but a dance to be danced, a song to be sung, a game to be played? Watch children before they've been trained out of their natural wisdom. See how they approach everything with wonder, with curiosity, with the delightful assumption that life is fundamentally playful. They don't worry about being productive or making progress or achieving goals. They simply engage with what's in front of them with complete presence and gentle enthusiasm. Then watch what happens as they grow older. Gradually, inevitably, they learn that life is serious business. They learn that play is something you do only after you've finished your work. That joy is something you earn through effort. That spontaneity is something you can't afford if you want to be responsible. And so, layer by layer, we learn to approach life like quiet accountants rather than artists, like managers rather than dancers, like critics rather than participants. But what if this entire approach is backwards? What if the seriousness we've learned is not wisdom, but a kind of spiritual constipation? What if the playfulness we've abandoned is not childishness, but the very essence of being fully alive? You see, when I speak of life as play, I'm not suggesting frivolity or irresponsibility. I'm pointing to something much deeper. The recognition that existence itself is a spontaneous, creative, utterly free expression of consciousness, delighting in its own infinite possibilities. Think about the universe for a moment. Galaxies spinning like cosmic pinwheels, stars being born and dying in spectacular light shows, planets dancing their ancient choreography around suns. Is any of this necessary? Is any of this practical? Or is it all just the universe playing with itself, expressing its creativity for the sheer quiet joy of expression? And you are part of this cosmic play. Your laughter, your tears, your confusion, your insights. They're all movements in this grand improvisation. Even your attempts to be serious, even your efforts to figure it all out, are just the universe playing at being a human who's trying to understand the universe. It's all quite deliciously absurd when you gently think about it. Here you are, a collection of stardust that has somehow organized itself into consciousness, worrying about whether you're living your life correctly. It's like a wave wondering if it's being a good wave, or a flame questioning whether it's burning properly. But we've been taught to approach our existence like it's a job performance review. We constantly evaluate ourselves. Am I being productive enough? Am I growing enough? Am I spiritual enough? Am I successful enough? We turn our lives into endless examinations, with ourselves as both the student and the stern teacher grading our performance. And the irony is that the more seriously we take this self-evaluation, the more we miss the actual experience of being alive. We become so focused on doing life right that we forget to live life fully. I had a teacher once who used to say, "The purpose of life is to live it, not to understand it, not to master it, not to optimize it, just to live it. To show up fully for the gentle experience of being human, with all its messiness and beauty and confusion and wonder." When you approach life as play, everything gently changes. Problems become quiet puzzles. Obstacles become opportunities for creative response. Failures become feedback. Setbacks become plot twists in an interesting story. This doesn't mean you stop caring about outcomes or stop taking appropriate action, but you hold your efforts lightly, like a jazz musician who practices scales for years so that in the moment of improvisation, she can forget all about technique and just play. You see, there are two kinds of seriousness in life. There's the seriousness of the ego, which takes everything personally, which believes that every outcome reflects on your worth as a person, which turns every interaction into a test of your adequacy. This kind of seriousness is actually a form of gentle self-obsession, a way of making everything about you and your performance. But there's another kind of seriousness, the seriousness of love, of presence, of engagement. This is the seriousness of a mother caring for her child, of an artist creating a painting, of two friends having a deep conversation. It's not self-conscious or performance-oriented. It's simply the natural intensity that arises when you are fully present to what matters. When you are playing, truly playing, you're completely absorbed, completely present, completely engaged, but you're not attached to winning or losing. You are participating for the pure joy of participation. This is how life wants to be lived, not as a grim march towards some distant goal, but as a constant improvisation, a moment-by-moment creative response to whatever appears. And when you live this way, when you bring a playful attention to your existence, you discover something remarkable. You're actually much more effective, much more creative, much more alive than when you were taking everything so seriously. Because play is the natural state of a free mind. When you're not defending yourself, not proving yourself, not trying to control the outcome, your intelligence can flow unobstructed. Your intuition can speak more clearly. Your creativity can express itself more freely. But perhaps most importantly, when you approach life as play, you stop being the victim of your circumstances and start being the artist of your experience. You realize that how you respond to what happens is always more important than what happens, and that response, that creative engagement with whatever life presents, is where your real power lies. The cosmic joke is that the moment you stop taking yourself so seriously, you start taking life more seriously. Not the seriousness of anxiety and control, but the seriousness of wonder, of gratitude, of full participation in the magnificent accident of being conscious in an apparently unconscious universe. So play not as an escape from reality, but as the deepest engagement with reality. Play with your identity, play with your beliefs, play with your plans. Hold everything lightly enough that you can change direction when life invites you to dance in a new way. Because ultimately that's all any of us are doing here, learning to dance with the mystery, to play with the unknown, to participate joyfully in a cosmic game whose rules are always changing, and whose purpose is simply the playing itself. Now, let me share with you one of the most practical and immediately applicable insights from all of spiritual understanding. Everything you see in others is a gentle reflection of something in yourself. This is not some mystical theory or psychological hypothesis. It's a simple observation about how consciousness works. You cannot perceive what you are not. You cannot recognize what you do not contain. The qualities that most attract you and the qualities that most repel you in other people are both quiet mirrors, showing you aspects of your own nature that you've either embraced or rejected. Think about someone who really irritates you. Maybe it's their arrogance, their neediness, their dishonesty, their self-righteousness. Now, I'm not suggesting that you express these qualities in exactly the same way they do, but somewhere in your psyche, somewhere in your potential, that same capacity exists. And your irritation is often proportional to how strongly you've rejected that aspect of yourself. We don't get triggered by qualities that are completely foreign to us. You don't get upset at a tree for being tall or a stone for being hard, because you don't identify with trees or stones. But when another human being displays a quality that you've spent energy suppressing in yourself, it's like they're gently holding up a mirror to show you exactly what you don't want to see. The person who drives you quietly crazy with their need for attention, look closely at your own relationship with attention. The person whose selfishness makes you quietly furious, examine your own capacity for selfishness and how you've judged it. The person whose emotional reactivity pushes all your buttons, notice where you might be reactive and where you've learned to hide it, even from yourself. This principle works in the positive direction as well. The qualities you most admire in others, their courage, their wisdom, their compassion, their authenticity, these are gentle reflections of your own potential. You can only recognize these qualities because they already exist within you, perhaps dormant, perhaps underdeveloped, but present nonetheless. When you see someone living with a freedom you long for, creating with a boldness you admire, loving with an openness that moves you, you're not seeing something foreign. You are seeing a gentle possibility for yourself, reflected back through another's expression. But here's where it gets interesting. Most people use relationships to avoid self-awareness rather than to deepen it. They project their rejected qualities onto others and then fight against those others as a way of maintaining the illusion that they themselves don't contain those qualities. It's much easier to judge someone else's anger than to acknowledge your own. It's much more comfortable to criticize someone else's neediness than to feel your own vulnerability. It's much safer to point out someone else's dishonesty than to examine the ways you lie to yourself. But when you understand the mirror principle, relationships become laboratories for gentle self-discovery. Every interaction becomes an opportunity to learn something about yourself that you couldn't see any other way. This doesn't mean becoming narcissistic or making everything about you. It means using your responses to others as information about your own inner landscape. When someone makes you uncomfortable, instead of immediately judging them, you might get curious. What is this person showing me about myself that I don't want to quietly see? I remember once being deeply annoyed by someone I considered to be spiritually pretentious. They were always talking about consciousness and awareness and enlightenment in ways that seemed performative and inauthentic to me. My irritation was intense and persistent, which was my first clue that this was about me, not them. When I looked more honestly, I had to admit that I too could be spiritually pretentious. I too sometimes used spiritual concepts to feel superior to others. I too sometimes performed wisdom rather than embodying it. My irritation with this person was really irritation with aspects of myself that I hadn't fully owned or integrated. And when I stopped projecting my discomfort onto them and started taking responsibility for it, something gently shifted. I could see their humanity more clearly, appreciate their genuine seeking beneath the performance, and most importantly, I could be more honest about my own tendency towards spiritual ego. This is the gift of difficult people. They show us where we're still unconscious, where we're still rejecting parts of ourselves, where we're still caught in the illusion that we're somehow different from, or better than other human beings. But the mirror principle also reveals something even more profound, the fundamental unity of consciousness. When you really understand that what you see in others is what you contain in yourself, the gentle boundaries between self and other begin to dissolve. You realize that the person who annoys you is not separate from you. They're another expression of the same consciousness that you are. The person you love is not outside you. They're reflecting back the love that you are. The person you judge is not different from you. They're showing you qualities you simply learned to hide or express differently. From this perspective, every relationship becomes a form of self-love. Not the narcissistic kind that refuses to see others clearly, but the mature kind that recognizes others as aspects of the same universal consciousness, expressing itself through infinite variations. When you can see both extremes of human potential, when you can recognize your own capacity for both gentleness and strength, both confusion and clarity, you stop being at war with yourself and others. This doesn't mean becoming relativistic or losing your ability to discern between skillful and unskillful actions. It means developing what the Buddhists call discriminating awareness, the ability to see clearly without the distortion of judgment. You can recognize that someone's behavior is harmful without making them into a villain. You can appreciate someone's wisdom without making them into a saint. You can see the full spectrum of human potential without having to choose sides in some cosmic battle between good and evil. Because the truth is, you contain it all. Every human possibility, every divine potential, every shadow and every light. You are not just the good person you try to be or the bad person you fear you might be. You are the entire spectrum of consciousness expressed through the unique filter of your particular nervous system. And when you can embrace this totality without judgment, when you can love the whole of what you are, rather than just the parts you approve of, you naturally extend that same wholeness and gentle acceptance to others. The mirror breaks, and you realize you were never looking at separate beings at all. You were always looking at yourself, wearing different costumes, playing different roles, exploring different possibilities of what it means to be conscious in this strange and wonderful universe. Let me tell you what meditation is not. It's not concentration. It's not visualization. It's not the practice of controlling your thoughts or achieving special states of consciousness. It's not a technique for becoming more spiritual or more peaceful or more anything. All of these approaches, well-intentioned as they may be, miss the fundamental point of meditation, which is not to create something new, but to recognize something that's already here. You see, most meditation instruction begins with the assumption that your mind is a problem to be solved. You are told to focus on your breath, to calm your thoughts, to repeat a mantra to quiet your mind, to visualize peaceful scenes to achieve inner peace. But this approach turns meditation into another gentle form of self-improvement, another project for the ego to master. True meditation is exactly the opposite. It's the recognition that you are not your thoughts, that you are not your emotions, that you are not the running commentary that seems to occupy so much of your mental space. You are the awareness in which all of these phenomena appear and disappear. Think of it this way: thoughts are like soft clouds passing through the vast sky of your consciousness. You don't have to make the clouds go away to experience the sky. The sky is always there, vast and spacious and clear, whether there are clouds or not. Your true nature is like that sky, always present, always peaceful, always whole, regardless of what thoughts or emotions might be softly passing through. But we've been so identified with our thoughts, so convinced that we are the voice in our head, that we've forgotten about the silence in which that voice appears. We've become so gently fascinated by the clouds that we've forgotten about the sky. Real meditation is simply the practice of remembering the sky, not by getting rid of the clouds, but by recognizing that you are not the clouds. You are what notices the clouds, what provides the gentle space for them to appear and dissolve. This is why the instruction "just sit" is so profound and so misunderstood. It's not asking you to do something. It's asking you to stop doing so much, to stop trying to improve your meditation, to stop evaluating your performance, to stop comparing this moment's experience with some ideal you've read about in books. Just sit, just breathe, just be aware of being aware. That's it. That's the whole gentle thing. But the mind often rebels against this simplicity. The ego wants to make meditation into an achievement, a skill to be mastered, a way to become special or enlightened or superior to ordinary consciousness. It wants to turn the simplest thing in the world, just being present, into a complicated technique with stages and levels and certifications. I've met people who have been meditating for decades and are still frustrated because they haven't achieved the states they think they should achieve. They sit there struggling with their thoughts, fighting their emotions, trying to force them. But here's the beautiful paradox. The moment you stop trying to meditate properly, your whole life becomes meditation. Walking becomes meditation. Cooking becomes meditation. Listening to music becomes meditation. Having a conversation becomes meditation. Because meditation is not a special activity. It's a way of being present to whatever is happening. It's the art of paying attention without agenda, of witnessing without judgment, of participating without attachment to outcome. When you wash dishes with this quality of attention, the dishes become your gentle teachers. When you listen to someone speak with this quality of presence, their words become doorways into deeper understanding. When you feel anger or sadness or joy with this quality of awareness, your emotions become allies rather than problems. This is what the Zen masters mean when they say, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. The activities don't change. The quality of attention changes. The doing becomes saturated with being. And in this saturated attention, this marinated awareness, you begin to discover that the ordinary world is absolutely extraordinary, that the sensation of breathing is as miraculous as any mystical experience, that the simple fact of being conscious is more profound than any philosophy. You don't need special cushions or perfect posture, or hours of silent retreat, though these things can be supportive. You just need to remember again and again that you are not the content of your experience. You are the space in which all experience appears. And the most beautiful thing about this recognition is that it's always available. Whether you're sitting in formal meditation or stuck in traffic, whether you're having a profound insight or feeling completely confused, the awareness that you are is always here, always present, always whole. You can't lose it because you are it. You can only forget it and then remember it again. And the remembering is not an achievement. It's a gentle homecoming. There are moments in life when the ordinary world suddenly becomes transparent, when the veil between the seen and the unseen gently grows thin, when consciousness recognizes its own infinite nature. These moments can come through meditation, through love, through art, through nature, through crisis, or sometimes through plant medicines and psychedelics that have been used by indigenous cultures for thousands of years. Whatever the doorway, the destination is always the same. The recognition that what you normally think of as you is just the tip of an iceberg of consciousness that extends far beyond the gentle boundaries of your personal identity. But let me be very clear about something. These expanded states are not the goal. They're reminders. They are not accomplishments to be achieved, but recognitions to be integrated. They're like looking at your life from the gentle perspective of an airplane instead of from ground level. The landscape doesn't change, but your view of it becomes vastly more comprehensive. I've known people who became addicted to these altered states, constantly seeking the next peak experience, the next breakthrough, the next level of consciousness. But this is just another form of spiritual materialism, another way the ego tries to turn transcendence into a possession. The real question is not how high you can fly, but how well you can walk when you come back down to earth. How do you integrate the vastness you've glimpsed into the ordinariness of daily life? How do you remember the unity you've experienced while navigating the apparent separateness of human relationships? In these expanded states, you might experience yourself as one with everything, connected to the trees, merged with the sky, indistinguishable from the fabric of existence itself. You might see through the illusion of being a separate person and recognize yourself as consciousness itself, playing at being human. These experiences can be profound, transformative, life-changing. But they can also be misleading if you mistake them for the whole truth, rather than seeing them as temporary glimpses through a different kind of lens. Because the ultimate understanding is not that you are God only when you are having mystical experiences. The ultimate understanding is that you are God right now, reading these words, feeling whatever you're feeling, thinking whatever you're thinking. The cosmic consciousness you glimpse in peak states is the same consciousness that is aware of these very words appearing in your mind. The mistake many people make is thinking that expanded consciousness is separate from ordinary consciousness, that there's some special state they need to achieve to be truly awake. But ordinary consciousness is expanded consciousness. You've just been taught not to notice its extraordinary nature. Right now, as you're listening to this, you are performing miracles that no computer can replicate. You are transforming abstract symbols into meaning, creating internal landscapes from words, feeling emotions in response to ideas. The fact that you can be aware of your own awareness is perhaps the most profound phenomenon in the known universe. And yet we take this for granted because it's so utterly ordinary, so constantly available, that we dismiss it as unimportant. We're like fish who don't notice water because they're always swimming in it. But consciousness-altering experiences can serve as a kind of spiritual shock treatment, temporarily lifting you out of your habitual ways of perceiving so you can see the water you've been swimming in all along. In these states, you might realize that what you normally call reality is just one very narrow bandwidth of an infinite spectrum of possible experiences. You might see that the solid, separate world of objects and others is actually a kind of optical illusion created by the particular way human consciousness organizes sensory information. You might experience time as fluid, space as malleable, identity as optional. You might feel yourself as the entire universe, temporarily forgetting that it's the universe and playing at being a person. You might remember that separation is a story, that boundaries are gentle conventions, that the fear of death is based on the illusion that you are something that can die. These insights can be tremendously liberating. They can free you from limiting beliefs, dissolve neurotic patterns, open up new possibilities for how to live and love and create. They can show you that reality is far more flexible, far more mysterious, far more playful than you ever imagined. But they can also be destabilizing, especially if you're not prepared to integrate them. Because once you've seen through the consensus reality that most people take for granted, you can't unsee it. You know that what most people consider solid and permanent is actually fluid and constructed. You know that what most people consider normal is actually just one very limited way of being conscious. This knowledge can create a sense of alienation, of being between worlds. You can no longer fully participate in the unconscious agreements that hold most social interactions together. But you haven't yet learned how to live fully from the expanded perspective you've glimpsed. This is why integration is so crucial. It's not enough to have profound experiences. You have to learn how to embody the insights they provide. How do you bring the love you felt for all existence into your relationship with your difficult neighbor? How do you maintain the peace you experienced in unity while dealing with the stress of paying bills? The bridge between expanded states and ordinary life is presence. When you can be fully present to whatever is happening, whether it's washing dishes or having a mystical experience, you discover that there are not actually two different kinds of consciousness. There is only consciousness appearing as infinite variations on the theme of awareness. And perhaps most importantly, these glimpses of expanded consciousness serve to remind you that you are not a spiritual seeker having human experiences. You are consciousness itself playing at being a seeker, playing at being human, playing at being separate so that it can have the joy of remembering its unity. The ultimate psychedelic experience is the recognition that ordinary consciousness is already psychedelic, already magical, already mysterious, already far stranger, and more wonderful than any altered state. You don't need to go anywhere else to find God. You just need to recognize that God is exactly what's looking through your eyes right now. Every person you meet is a walking, talking koan, a living riddle that, if properly understood, reveals something profound about the nature of consciousness itself. But most of us approach relationships like consumers in a marketplace, looking for people who will provide us with what we think we need: validation, security, entertainment, meaning. This transactional approach to human connection is why so many relationships feel hollow, why so much intimacy feels forced, why we can be surrounded by people and still feel fundamentally alone. We're not actually meeting each other. We're projecting our fantasies and fears onto each other and then trying to manage the chaos that inevitably results. But what if relationships are not meant to fulfill you? What if they're meant to reveal you, to show you exactly who you are beneath all the stories you tell yourself about who you think you are? When you truly encounter another human being, not your idea of them, not your projection onto them, but the raw reality of their consciousness, something extraordinary happens. You see yourself reflected back in ways you never could by looking in a mirror. Their anger shows you your own capacity for anger. Their fear reveals your own relationship with fear. Their joy awakens your own joy. Their sadness touches your own sadness. Not because you are the same person, but because you are both expressions of the same fundamental consciousness, exploring different variations on the theme of being human. This is why intimate relationships are simultaneously the most beautiful and the most terrifying experiences we can have. In genuine intimacy, all your masks gently come off. All your carefully constructed personas softly dissolve. You are seen, truly seen, perhaps for the first time in your life. And being seen, really seen, is both what we long for most and what we fear most. Because when someone sees you clearly, they see not just your light but also your shadow. They see not just your strengths, but also your wounds. They see not just who you pretend to be, but who you actually are. Most people can't tolerate this level of visibility for very long. We put our masks back on, retreat into our familiar roles, return to the safety of performing ourselves, rather than being ourselves. We choose the comfort of being misunderstood over the vulnerability of being truly known. But if you can stay present to this visibility, if you can allow yourself to be seen, without immediately trying to manage or control what the other person sees, something miraculous happens. You discover that being fully seen doesn't destroy you, it liberates you. All the energy you've been spending maintaining your image, protecting your reputation, managing other people's perception of you, all of that energy becomes available for more creative purposes. You can finally relax into being who you actually are, instead of who you think you should be. And from this relaxation comes a different kind of love. Not the love that tries to get something, but the love that simply appreciates what is. You begin to love people, not for what they do for you, but for what they are. Not for how they make you feel, but for the miracle of their existence. This shift from needy love to appreciative love changes everything. When you're not trying to get love, you naturally give it. When you're not defending yourself, you naturally understand others. When you're not performing, you naturally connect. But perhaps the most profound gift of conscious relationship is that it shows you the illusion of separation. When you truly meet another person, when you see them without the filter of your projections, and they see you without the filter of theirs, you realize that the boundary between self and other is not nearly as solid as you thought. In moments of genuine intimacy, it becomes unclear where you end and they begin. Not in some mystical, ethereal sense, but in a very practical way. Their joy becomes your joy. Their pain becomes your pain. Their insights become your insights. The love flowing between you is not something either of you possesses. It's something you both are. This is why the deepest teachings about love always sound paradoxical. You have to give up trying to love in order to discover that you are love. You have to stop looking for the perfect person in order to see the perfection in imperfect people. You have to let go of the relationship you want in order to appreciate the relationship you have. And sometimes this means loving people enough to let them go. Real love is never possessive. It doesn't try to own or control or capture the beloved. It appreciates them the way you might appreciate a sunset, completely, fully, without any desire to take it home with you. When you love someone this way, you set them free to be exactly who they are. And paradoxically, when people feel truly free in your presence, they often choose to stay close to you, not because they need you, but because they enjoy the space you create for their authentic expression. But even if they choose to leave, even if the relationship ends, you haven't lost anything essential, because the love you discovered through them was never theirs to begin with. It was yours. It was always yours. They simply provided the mirror in which you could recognize your own loving nature. And once you've recognized it, once you've remembered that love is what you are rather than what you seek, you carry that recognition into every subsequent relationship. Each person you meet becomes an opportunity to love more freely, more fully, more fearlessly. This doesn't mean becoming indiscriminate or naive. Love and wisdom go hand in hand. You can love someone completely while still maintaining healthy boundaries. You can appreciate someone's essence while still making practical decisions about how much time and energy to invest in the relationship. But underneath all the practical considerations, underneath all the compatibility questions and lifestyle choices, there remains this fundamental recognition. Every person you encounter is consciousness in disguise, spirit wearing a human costume, the same divine intelligence that you are, exploring what it's like to be this particular expression of itself. And when you can see people this way, as fellow expressions of the one consciousness that is aware of itself through all of us, every relationship becomes sacred. Every interaction becomes an opportunity for mutual recognition, mutual awakening, mutual appreciation of the magnificent mystery of being conscious in an apparently unconscious universe. There is a difference between being alone and being lonely, between solitude and isolation, between the fullness of your own company and the emptiness of having no one else around. And understanding this difference might be one of the most important distinctions you can make in learning to live authentically. Most people are terrified of being alone with themselves. They fill every moment with noise, with activity, with other people's voices and thoughts and energies. They carry devices that ensure they're never more than seconds away from stimulation, from distraction, from the comforting illusion that they are connected to something outside themselves. But what are they running from? What is it about their own consciousness that feels so threatening, so uncomfortable, so unbearable, that they must constantly escape from it? Usually, it's the silence. The silence where all their stories about themselves become obviously fabricated. The silence where their busyness is revealed as avoidance. The silence where they might have to confront the fundamental questions about who they are and what they're doing here, that they've been postponing their entire lives. We've been taught that this silence is empty, boring, unproductive. We've been conditioned to see solitude as punishment, as deprivation, as something to be endured rather than enjoyed. But this conditioning has it exactly backwards. Solitude is not the absence of connection. It's the presence of connection with yourself. It's not the lack of love. It's the discovery of the love that you are. It's not emptiness. It's fullness so complete that you don't need anything outside yourself to feel whole. When you can truly be alone, not hiding from others, not rejecting relationships, but simply being complete in your own presence, you develop what I call existential confidence. You know from direct experience that your well-being doesn't depend on other people's approval, that your peace doesn't depend on external circumstances, that your joy doesn't depend on getting what you want. This doesn't make you antisocial or independent in some cold, disconnected way. Quite the opposite. When you are truly comfortable with yourself, you become much more available to others. When you're not trying to get something from relationships, you can give much more freely. When you're not afraid of being alone, you can be much more present when you're with people. But learning to enjoy your own company is like learning any other art. It takes practice, patience, and a willingness to move through the initial discomfort. At first, when you sit quietly with yourself, you might be flooded with all the thoughts and feelings you've been avoiding. All the worries and regrets and anxieties that you've been drowning out with constant activity suddenly have space to be heard. This is not a problem. It's the beginning of healing. These thoughts and feelings have been trying to get your attention for years. They've been knocking at the door of your consciousness, wanting to be acknowledged, wanting to be felt, wanting to be integrated. But you've been too busy, too distracted, too afraid to open the door. Solitude gives you the opportunity to finally listen. Not to analyze or fix or understand these inner voices, but simply to give them the attention they've been seeking. And when you can be present with your own pain, without trying to make it go away, when you can sit with your own confusion, without immediately reaching for answers, something begins to shift. You realize that you are bigger than any thought or feeling that arises within you. You discover that you can be aware of sadness without being sad, aware of fear without being afraid, aware of confusion without being confused. You are the space in which all these experiences appear and disappear, and that space is vast enough to hold anything. This is perhaps the greatest gift of solitude, the discovery of your own capacity to be with whatever is, without resistance, without judgment, without the need to change or fix or improve anything. Just the simple, profound ability to be present with what is, and from this presence comes wisdom. Not the wisdom of books or teachers or external authorities, but the wisdom that emerges from the direct encounter with your own consciousness. When you stop filling every moment with input from outside, you begin to hear the subtle voice of your own inner knowing. This voice doesn't speak in words. It speaks in hunches, in feelings, in sudden clarities, in quiet knowings that arise from some source deeper than thought. It's the voice that knows when something feels right or wrong for you, regardless of what others might think. It's the voice that knows what you truly love, what you're genuinely called to do, who you authentically are beneath all the roles and expectations. But you can only hear this voice in silence. Not the silence of suppressing thoughts, but the silence of not being compulsively driven by them. The silence that allows space between stimulus and response, between question and answer, between what happens and what you make it mean. In this silence you begin to discriminate between the voice of wisdom and the voice of conditioning. You learn to distinguish between authentic intuition and psychological projection. You develop what the mystics call discriminating awareness, the ability to see clearly without the distortion of personal agenda. And as this discriminating awareness develops, you become less and less dependent on others to tell you who you are, what you should do, how you should live. Not because you become arrogant or dismissive of guidance, but because you develop confidence in your own capacity to navigate the complexities of existence. You realize that the answers you've been seeking outside yourself were always available inside yourself. You just needed to create enough space, enough silence, enough solitude to hear them. This is not a selfish withdrawal from the world. This is a necessary retreat that allows you to show up more fully, more authentically, more generously when you do engage with others. You can only give what you have, and if you haven't taken the time to discover what you have, you'll spend your life trying to give what you think you should have, instead of what you actually have. Solitude teaches you what you actually have: infinite space, unconditional awareness, inexhaustible presence. And when you know this about yourself, when you've verified it through direct experience, you can offer it to others, not as something you've learned, but as something you are. So here we are, you and I, having traveled together through the essential recognitions that gently transform a human life from a problem to be solved into an adventure to be lived. We've seen through the myth of personal inadequacy, discovered the freedom of authentic solitude, explored the surrender required for genuine love, learned the art of letting go, recognized life as cosmic play, understood the mirror of relationships, touched the truth about meditation, glimpsed expanded consciousness, and found the wisdom that emerges in true solitude. And now comes the question that ties it all together: How do you actually live from these recognitions? How do you embody this understanding in the midst of traffic jams and tax bills, difficult conversations, and everyday responsibilities? How do you stay awake in a world that seems designed to gently keep you asleep? The answer is both simpler and more complex than you might expect. You live fully by refusing to postpone life. You live fully by treating each moment as if it were the only moment that exists. Not because you should, but because it's literally true. This moment right now is not a rehearsal for some more important moment to come. This breath is not preparation for a more significant breath. This day is not just getting you ready for a better day tomorrow. This is it. This is your life happening now, in all its ordinary extraordinariness. But we've been so trained to live for the future, to work towards goals, to save for retirement, to wait for the right relationship, or the right job, or the right moment to finally start living, that we miss the fact that life is only ever happening now. Not now as opposed to then, but now as the eternal presence in which past and future appear as thoughts. The present moment is not a slice of time between past and future. It's the timeless ground in which the illusion of time appears. When you really understand this, when you feel it in your bones rather than just thinking about it intellectually, you stop treating the present moment as a means to some future end. You stop using now to get to later. You recognize that now is the only place where life actually happens, where love actually flows, where joy actually exists. This doesn't mean becoming impractical or ignoring the future entirely. You still make plans, still work towards goals, still prepare for what's coming, but you hold these future projections lightly, as preferences rather than demands, as possibilities rather than requirements. And underneath all your planning and preparing and working toward, you remain anchored in the simple fact of being alive right now. You taste your food fully. You listen to music completely. You feel the sun on your skin without thinking about what you need to do next. You love people with your whole heart without trying to guarantee how they'll respond. This is what it means to live fully, to participate completely in whatever is happening, without holding back, without hedging your bets, without one foot out the door, just in case things don't go as planned. But full participation requires letting go of the illusion that you're in control of outcomes. You can influence outcomes. You can work skillfully toward what you value, but you cannot control the infinite variables that determine how things actually unfold. And this is liberating rather than limiting. When you accept that you cannot control outcomes, you are free to give everything to the process. You can write with complete passion without needing to know if anyone will read your words. You can love with complete openness without needing to know if your love will be returned. You can create with complete authenticity without needing to know if your creation will be appreciated. You become like a musician who is so absorbed in playing that she forgets about the audience, about whether she's playing well, about what people might think. She's simply lost in the music itself, in the pure joy of expressing what wants to be expressed through her. This is the art of living fully, becoming so absorbed in the experience of being alive that you forget to evaluate your performance. So present to what's happening that you stop worrying about what should be happening. So engaged with the actual that you stop being haunted by the ideal. But living fully also means embracing the difficult parts of existence with the same wholehearted engagement you bring to the pleasant parts. It means being present to sadness without trying to cheer yourself up. Present to fear without trying to make yourself brave. Present to confusion without trying to force clarity. Because all of these experiences, joy and sorrow, clarity and confusion, expansion and contraction, are movements in the symphony of consciousness. They're all expressions of the same life force that moves through you. When you resist any of them, you're resisting life itself. When you welcome all of them, you're living fully. This doesn't mean becoming passive or resigned. It means developing what I call active acceptance. The ability to be completely present to what is while simultaneously responding to it with all your creativity and intelligence and love. You accept the situation completely, and from that acceptance, appropriate action emerges naturally. Not the frantic action of someone trying to escape what's happening, but the organic response of someone who is fully engaged with what's happening. And in this engagement, in this full participation in the human experience, you discover that you are not living your life. Life is living itself through you. You are not having experiences. You are the experiencing itself. You are not observing the cosmic dance. You are the cosmic dance, temporarily convinced that you're a separate dancer. When you recognize this, when you feel it directly, rather than just understanding it conceptually, everything becomes play. Not frivolous play, but the kind of play that is so absorbed, so passionate, so complete, that it becomes indistinguishable from the most profound seriousness. You play at being human, the way a master actor plays a role, completely committed, totally present, while never forgetting that it's a performance. You take the character seriously, without taking yourself seriously. You engage fully with the drama, without being destroyed by it when the curtain falls. And perhaps most importantly, you stop waiting for permission to live fully. You stop looking for the perfect conditions, the right circumstances, the ideal moment to finally start being who you really are. You recognize that this moment, whatever its apparent limitations, is the only moment available for living. And you dive in completely, not because you have to, not because you should, but because that's what life is for. To be lived fully, freely, fearlessly, with the same wild abandon that moves galaxies through space and grows flowers from dirt. You are not a tourist here, observing life from a safe distance. You are life itself, experiencing the indescribable miracle of being conscious in a conscious universe. And that experience, just as it is right now, is the most precious thing in existence. Don't postpone it. Don't improve it. Don't fix it. Just live it fully, completely, with everything you have and everything you are. And so we come to the end of our journey together. Though in truth, there is no end to the exploration of consciousness, no final destination in the adventure of being human, no graduation from the school of existence. What we've discovered together is not new information, but ancient recognition. Not something you need to remember, but something you need to stop forgetting. Not a teaching to be learned, but a reality to be lived. You are not broken. You never were. You are not a mistake that needs correcting, a problem that needs solving, a project that needs completing. You are a temporary expression of the eternal, a brief flowering of the infinite, a unique and unrepeatable experiment in consciousness. And the meaning of your life, the meaning of life, is just to be alive. Not to achieve something beyond yourself, not to become someone other than who you are, not to justify your existence to some cosmic authority, but simply to live fully, presently, authentically in each moment, as it arises. This doesn't mean life becomes easy, or that challenges disappear. It means you stop making your challenges into problems and start experiencing them as the very texture of being alive. You stop demanding that existence conform to your preferences and start appreciating it as the wild, unpredictable